And it starts at 11:30, right?
Yes.
I'll be back like in 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for working with me on the late ones.
Sure thing. Not a problem, my friend. So everybody's there, everybody's labeled. For napkins, I just brought this dispenser guy and then help you as many as one, and then the drinks, everybody. I didn't put them in order, I just figured I'll keep them iced.
Okay. Let's see, do you have, there's no coffee or anything?
I didn't finish on the coffee. I didn't
that's
give you the
fine.
quote.
That's fine. Okay, very good.
Yeah. And then other than that, what time is it finished? I can come at least pick this guy up.
12:30.
12:30. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll come up around 1.
And I'll stop by after that and give you a credit card or whatever.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Good luck with you then.
All right, thank you.
So it's all set up for something. Well, there he is.
Hi
There
there.
you go.
Hey, here I am.
How are you?
Good. Just a little warm coming in there. Still so humid inside, you know.
Yeah. So everything's set up. We got the food, everything. So
Great.
no glitches yet.
Kim is coming. Like I said, it's a little late, but otherwise fine.
Okay.
How do you pronounce his name? Anurag?
Yeah, Anurag.
Anurag.
Yeah. You met him before, right?
I have.
Yeah.
I think Raymar Tiraldo is coming too, Rick, and he's bringing. He might be bringing something we can see or something. We'll see.
Okay.
Like a little videos. Otherwise, what I thought I would do is pretty much stick to my script.
Okay.
Thinking that because we're doing the web conference,
Yeah.
and what will that look like? Do you know? Is it going to be this, or will it be the slides?
So let me finish shipping this up.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, then I can show exactly what's going to happen with that.
Is there men's room on this floor?
Yeah, there should be one down that way. So they showed me how to.
Jason's here again.
Show me how to, let's see if this is going here. Okay, so when are you going to show the video, is it going to be off of a flash drive or off the internet?
I think it's going to be a flash drive. I don't know for a fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we may not do it, but
Okay.
depends. It's yeah, in fact, we probably. The idea is we'd have something like a minute and a half while people are just getting their sandwiches and so on.
Okay.
That we could run.
Oh, so yeah, I expect people to start showing up at about 11:30. So you're probably not going to start speaking until about 11:35, so everybody has a chance to get their sandwiches and everything.
Okay.
And we've got to end like right at 12:30 because there's another class coming in after that.
Okay.
So when you have this thing going, and if you want to show a video off a flash drive, what you've got to do is you got to go into the video and start it, and then go to share screen.
Hey, there he is. We're just talking about it. Talking about a flash drive. Do we want to run the video or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you familiar with Zoom? Oh, you are, okay. So basically, I was telling you we just got to get going into the video, and then you click share screen. Is that right? If you want the people in the Zoom audience to see a full screen version of the video, you need to hit share screen when you start playing it.
Okay.
Is that right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if it'll show this. This is.
It'll show just what's on the board if you do that. Otherwise, you're going to see the entire view you have right now.
I see.
Which
Which
would not be
I show the
conducive.
surrounding things.
So, and the tech guys should be here throughout the entire presentation. So, yeah.
What do you think?
There's the USB.
Okay.
There's a minute and a half.
With that?
That's the minute and a half. That's
They're all three on there. So I have a minute and a half one. I have a 35-minute one, and there's a 10-minute Sarasota one. I would recommend starting, just opening with a minute and a half one and going into the presentation though. Yeah. That's what I would, based on like the final product, you know?
Yep. No, I think that's just while people are settling in. Rick was just saying,
Yeah.
they're going to start their lunch. While they're settling in, we'll give them something to see.
So what's the plan for the?
I'm going to stick to the script. You know, as opposed to moving around. Stick over here.
So you're going to be there?
What I don't, yeah, and what I don't know is what's. We're just saying what's going to be on the webcast. You know, it's going to be slides, and so it'll be like a voiceover slides, or it's going to be this presentation.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know how it's set up, so.
Kim said she might feel a little late. Crashed her car.
Oh no.
She did something about crashing her car in Boston or something while she was on.
I think we're the best place for maybe set up and not be in anybody's way.
Well, no one's going to be sitting in the back row, so if you want to do right in the middle or in the back.
Okay, yeah. Well, that might be perfect, actually. So essentially just where people have a name tag is where people are going to be sitting, those are the seats that are
Yes.
accounted for. Will there be,
There might be some extra people that don't have name tags, and they could potentially sit here or there. So just judge, just remember that. I guess.
okay, but that's why I wondered, is so the other seats could be filled in.
It could be.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so there might be, okay.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, is I didn't want to be in a place where I might be, like, it would be really intrusive if I had to come and check this camera in the middle of the presentation, so maybe that's not the right place.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want to have to snake back here to, to edit it. Are you here with the school?
Yes, I'm a teacher here.
I'm Ryan.
Sorry?
So my name's Ryan.
Oh, I'm Rick.
Rick?
Nice to meet
Good
you.
to meet you. We're going to try to help forward and tell some of this story, so.
Okay.
Quite a bit with the school too, so it's kind of cool to see some of this paths crossing.
Okay.
We worked with Dr. Graham on the new digital media or digital marketing course that being taught.
Okay.
What's your
Finance.
okay?
Yeah. So how long have you known Gordon?
Probably since just about the beginning of the year.
Okay.
I think at the end of last year, he was just down by we're in the old co-working building downtown Sarasota,
Okay.
and he was stopping by looking for some of this stuff,
Mhm.
and we just crossed paths, started telling me about the idea, and I was fairly intrigued with everything, and then over 3 weeks, that was like a week of intense training, and then 2 weeks kind of with him, dissecting the story, breaking up into a bunch of little small chunks for people to kind of come and find it online.
Okay.
The different pieces of it, just kind of got real interested in what's going on here, and said, hey, I got relationships with X, Y, and Z. Let's get, so just make the introductions to figure out how do you connect these dots, because this would be really cool here.
Yeah.
I mean, to do something like that here in Sarasota, it would just be really interesting.
Yeah.
So it just seems like a perfect fit.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
To try to paint that picture. Hey, Gordon, you might stand up there so I can take a look at what this is going to do. Come together.
It's kind of been air conditioning. So having a hot flash, I guess.
We'll worry about the lighting here, but we'll at least capture the premise. That's why we did that. If you want to click take a little sneak peek at the third one. There is the Sarasota cut.
Where do I click?
You just double click on it, it should open it. I know you haven't seen those yet.
So should be mouse from here.
Third one, Sarasota Impact.
Yep.
So then once the video is queued up, if you want to share it with everybody in the Zoom audience, you'd have to go to Let's see. But the tech guys will be here to answer. Hi there.
Hi.
Did you RSVP?
Cool.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Did you?
Not yet.
Let me get your RSVP. I'm sorry, but there's spaces. There's extra lunches actually. I can give you an extra lunch. There's one veggie option and 2 sandwiches.
Thank you.
Now, what did it do?
What's that?
Oh, this is a teaser?
Yeah, the top one is the short one, so that's the minute and a half
Okay.
trailer on the website. And then the other one is the full. It worked out to about 35 minutes.
Okay.
I chopped up your
Okay.
presentation from the other day.
Yeah, we don't have all that much time. We're gonna sort of start.
Yeah.
Well, I
want
wouldn't,
plenty of
yeah,
time for discussion. So.
I think just opening with the first one is probably the little teaser. Straight into it.
I'm thinking about the presentation. It's okay. Maybe we just move through it pretty quickly. I don't have to tell my joke.
The good
Just
thing
go to
is,
the sort of the first slide. Huh?
the good thing is the full version's there, so if anybody wants more depth, you know, you can send links out after
Right.
to the question line. It's gonna be too bad. You said you're gonna stay over by the podium, Gordon, or
Yeah.
how do you plan on?
I'm gonna say what it said. Follow my notes.
I'm gonna focus on you, because we have a presentation already.
Hi, how are you?
I'm Miss Sandra. I have to go back to because there's another entrance, but if you have any students, just set them. They actually just come in.
I do.
Just
Okay.
next door there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So it looks like we might have to after 12:30. I requested them for longer. It sounds like they changed around their schedule to keep the room longer, so I think it should be okay.
Good. Good. Well, just we want a good discussion.
Yeah.
So, I won't take up so much time in presentations.
So are you going to be here, or is someone going to be here throughout the entire presentation?
If you need someone, yes,
There you go.
yes.
So I was trying to experiment with the video. If you double click on one of these videos, how would you get it to be shared to
Okay,
full screen?
you have to click here on share screen.
Right.
But first of all, okay. Open the video.
It's not downloaded to the desktop, it's on the flash drive.
Okay, yeah. This one, right?
Yeah,
Which one do you want?
the first one.
The first one. So you open this video. Just then you go on share screen.
Mhm.
This is
Oh,
your
I see.
video. You
Okay.
click on the video and then you hit share screen.
Okay.
The video comes back here and you just hit play and whoever is watching is able to watch.
Okay.
But again, if I'm here, I can just start it with you.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. You might have to, because I'm not sure that the presenter knows how to do all that.
I'll do this for you, man. It's not a big deal. I'm just gonna stop the sharing for now. Is this, if there's gonna be more than one video?
Is it going to be more than
No,
one
it's
video?
just the one.
Just this one that I just
The
opened?
teaser, yeah, the little short one up top. You can put it on the desktop if you want.
So I can just leave it like this and we're gonna start it whenever you guys need it.
Okay.
All right?
Perfect. So the Zoom session, typically you can log in early as long as this session's going
Yes.
over here.
Yes. So when I started the meeting at 11, I opened the session for anyone else, whoever has a link can join. The only thing they have to do on their end, you saw it because we tested it last week, they have to enable the microphone and the camera if they want to.
All right. Sunita, there's actually 5 lunches that are unaccounted for, so help yourself too.
Yeah, that's okay, thank you. I usually don't eat lunch. So.
Oh, okay, okay.
Thank you.
So these are the people coming on the web conference.
Yep.
Hello. It's Dinah here.
Hi, Dinah.
I see you're getting set up.
Hi, Dinah. Gordon.
Will you be at the podium, Moses? Yeah. So I'm gonna claim your corner seat here. Yep. Guys, right here, Gordon.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you? Hello.
I'm Gordon Butte.
I'm Marty Hurwitz. How are you, Gordon?
Hey, Gordon, Lori Kaiser.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. I'm Sunita, nice to meet you.
I'm Marty Hurwitz. Actually, I'll go on. Yeah, that's what I ordered. Yeah, Diet.
Whatever. Yeah, same.
Hi, John.
Hi there, Gordon.
It's Dr. John Stewart from South Africa. We're going to talk about some of the work he led, about some of the work that we did together. Thanks for coming, John.
Okay.
Need to help me out. Hey. So am I working my own slides here?
Yes.
Don't need this. Where's the slide?
Let's see here. Hold on 1 second.
Yes. So should you?
I have this deck here. Is it this one?
No.
Okay.
No.
You have like the flash drive?
Rick, did you close the PowerPoint?
The PowerPoint here?
Oh, no, you said you were going to bring it up.
Oh, okay. Which one is this?
How are you?
It's been a while.
Yeah, it is. How are you?
Scroll down. Good. 17.
But enjoying myself.
Scroll down here.
This one?
PDF. No, one above it.
This one? This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So why is it showing twice?
Sorry?
Why is it showing sort of double?
I don't know. Because you're actually using the browser to move it. So it's kind of
So it has to scroll.
yes. but we
Try to
can.
get the space
Let's
bar
see if
every
there
time. You should go down by one slide.
have like.
Did you hear what he said?
Yes, but I'm gonna try to open with a crop reader and see if it's better.
Oh, yeah, that'd be better for sure.
What are you doing here? I think it's great to see you. Glad you. Good to see you. Of course you
Yeah.
are.
If you go full screen in the house, right there, that one, yeah.
Okay. Full screen.
Guys, while we're getting
Well,
set,
I wanted to
as far
share
as
it
the drinks,
first.
all the drinks
You want me to
are
share it
back there in
now?
the corner if you want to grab one.
I have to share on Zoom
There's
so
a
they
couple
can
extra
see.
lunches. Looks like they've been grabbed already, so
Okay.
we're all set on
Which
lunches.
one? It is this one.
Pretty close.
Okay.
But it only shows double.
It's like this when you go full screen, unfortunately.
Go up to where it says the Zoom, you see the percentage and click on 100%. Not full screen yet.
Kind of. That's a little bit. Let's see if a little bit less, maybe.
Get rid of that sidebar.
I can. You see what 100% now. Keep cutting there. It's only fine shooting. That's it. If I is too much. Do you think like this is fine? Because it seems like
It's the best we're gonna get.
I think it's.
How are you doing it?
You just use the arrows to go. Right now you're sharing everything with the people that are connected. When you have to show the video, I know you have the video. Let me know. I'm gonna show the video as well. Okay.
Okay, so welcome to the Research Cafe. We've got a very special outside speaker today by the name of Gordon Butte. And Gordon is the CEO and Chief Technology Officer of Cognitive Science Systems LP, CEO of Innovation Science Company, and the inventor of Mental Modeling Technology Platform, which helps us to better understand and influence human judgment, decision-making, and behavior. Gordon is here today to discuss the research that drives this technology and the ways that technology can be leveraged by the Sarasota-Manatee community and by USF, SM, and our students. So, Gordon?
Good. Thank you, Rick. Should we play?
Oh, you want to open up with the video, right?
No, that's maybe just in the interest of time.
I think.
Let's just talk. I'm going to skip my joke. It's not that funny. But please, everybody know what this means?
Anything's possible.
Everything is possible. And that's kind of what I want to explore with you today. What's now possible here in Sarasota, what's now possible for USF in Sarasota, and kind of what's now possible for everybody out there, everybody in organizations of all kinds. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And rather than my talk, I would suggest that what we really want to do together is think together. Listen to me, let's think together. Let's get into System 2 mode. I hope you, hey Kim, I hope you read Daniel Kahneman's bestseller, Thinking Fast and Slow, and you know what System 1 and System 2 is. I want to be with you in System 2 mode today. So here's what we want to think together about. New technology, you can read the slide along with me, a new model for strategy and communications. Behavioral science informed, evidence-based approach that works on any problem or opportunity, where success relies on understanding and influencing, and I would add enabling human, as opposed to machine, human judgment, decision-making, and behavior. And who is it for? See here. For leaders at all levels in business, government, and not-for-profit organizations worldwide. It's designed for anyone to accomplish high-value outcomes. We look for behavioral outcomes for the lowest achievable cost and risk. And those are kind of fantastic statements, kind of amazing. And I want to emphasize with you, first of all, think about it. Think about this is, for the first time, a people science, behavioral science, people evidence-based, simple, I'll show you, management system for addressing significant problems or opportunities that anyone can learn and successfully apply. First time. What's now possible? And I would suggest to you, as we think together, that is huge. The potential for that is huge in capital letters. It's not a claim. It's not a claim. This is not a pitch. There's no selling going on. It's a description. And we find that we in cognitive science systems and some of the people associated, we don't make claims because we don't have to. And the reason is because we have the science, as I'll demonstrate, the science and the evidence, the application of that science for over a quarter of a century on our side. But if right now there's a little voice going on in your head and you hear something like, well, this can't be right, or, you know, what's he saying, or here comes the pitch, I'd suggest you just take a break and hit the pause button, because it's just your little system, one voice talking about. So let's continue. Rick says we want to look at the science. See if I can do this. So who's behind this? Well, two people actually. On the basic science side is Brooke Fischoff, PhD. Brooke earned his PhD from Daniel Kahneman, who, as you may know, is the winner of the 2002 Nobel Prize for Economics. Dr. Kahneman is a cognitive scientist. He's also the author of the bestseller, Thinking Fast and Slow, in which Brooke figures prominently. Brooke leads the world's foremost decision science program from Carnegie Mellon University. He conducted the foundational research for what is today called mental modeling, and he created the first framework for behavioral intervention, which we'll show today. I'll discuss in more depth. He was among the pioneers, in decision science, with fewer than 100 people working at his level internationally when he first got started. Today, of course, decision science is a huge multidisciplinary field with contributions from cognitive and behavioral psychology, neuroscience, management science, operations research, and philosophy. And oh yes, among his many accomplishments, he was elected last year to the National Academy of Sciences. All the work you are about to see, and we're going to think together about, is very much, and certainly the vision of Brooke Fischoff. By a twist of fate, and that's all it was, I've been working in parallel and along with Brooke for more than a quarter of a century as a kind of an engineer, doing what I can do to help make this happen. So a little bit more about me up here. I'm on the applied side. You can think of it, or I lay claim to being the inventor of this strange thing called mental modeling technology platform and mental modeling technology. I hold the patent, and all the rights to the intellectual property generated over 3 decades of application internationally. And Rick said, talked a little bit about the science and the research behind it. That translates into more or less 50,000 hours of study, formal research, informal research, application, observing people's behavior, seeing how they're processing it, formal mental models research, 50,000 hours, more or less. Today, and I think Brooke would say, you know, what we're up to here is breaking the applied science barrier. What is that? It's translating the basic science into practical methods and tools. That's what we started out doing in 1990. We're continuing to do it today. We're going to continue doing that for a long time, and you'll see some of the products of that. And I would say too, that mental modeling technology is really only possible. It's only possible that we have this, that's available, because of the confluence of three streams of science, if you would. Certainly the latest advances in the behavioral science, decision science prominently, the currency of the applied science, what's available now, and network science that we'll explore. So Cognitive Science Systems is a new knowledge and intellectual property development and support company, as I call it. And as CTO, one of my roles is developing new models and products for the platform, mental modeling technology platform. From decades of application experience in invention and innovation, we know that the success of new products turns on the quality of its match to these three primary criteria. One, very important one, strong unmet need on the part of the customer, if you would, the user. Two, value creation criteria, qualitative and quantitative. Yes, money, but also a lot of qualitative value that you can't easily count, but we know it's value, important value, as most meaningful to the customer, and then a match with the total requirements or performance as set by the customer. So 3 years ago, in setting out to design and build mental modeling technology platform, the first task was to address all three. And let's focus on the strong unmet need, because I think it's worth thinking about together. It's very clear that leaders at all levels, if you think about it, in all organizations of all types and sizes around the world, have a strong unmet need to accomplish positive change and innovation through people or with people. This, of course, has always been the case. This is not new. Leaders' success often depends on how well they understand and influence other people's judgment, decision-making, and behavior, as we clearly know, to achieve their goals. And we know that leaders struggle with that task. I say leaders, everybody struggles with that task. It's a big task, and they struggle with it on a daily basis and rarely do as well as they hoped or intended, if they're honest with themselves. So here's kind of the dilemma. Certainly I've seen this at work many, many, many times over those 50,000 hours. Everyone is stuck. They're all stuck. And they're stuck in working as hard as they can, as hard as we can, with pretty much all of the tools available, hoping for a better result next time. Or this time we'll get, but next time, right? Better result, same tools, same approach, but a better result, which I'm told is the definition of crazy. And from Daniel Kahneman's work, and the work of others, we now know kind of the problem. The problem is everyone is using their intuition, especially their intuition about people, to make major decisions. Now, what's wrong with that? Well, recently, Dr. Kahneman was asked along the following lines by a senior leader: is it okay for me to use my intuition to make major decisions, big bets? And Kahneman's reply was, well, there may be situations where one must rely on one's intuition, but as a general rule, I would recommend against it. So where does that leave us? Right? We're stuck until something else comes along. So the following criteria, again, drawing on research and application experience, set up for the design of this. And it's very important to be explicit about the functions of a product, the new product. Be clear about that. So the primary function here is, as you see, primary function is to enable what this technology does in the hands of people. It doesn't do much sort of sitting on the shelf or looking at the software, but in the hands of people, it enables them to do better with other people. And I'll show you how in many ways. So the primary function is enabling people to better work with other people, to accomplish goals and produce positive outcomes and topics that are important to them. Some of the features we'll look at in a second, in the interest of time. So, and moving on to the value creation criteria. And I said these, it has to positively, or have the potential to positively impact everyone involved. That's 7.5 billion. I'll come back to that. It's got to be measured by qualitative and quantitative objectives that the users set, not the inventors. And it's got to be affordable by everybody, by all. Overall cost is set at a fraction, a tiny fraction of the total value created. Requirements for performance: the invention, the solution, in this case, mental modeling technology platform, and the process required to apply it must be capable of being tailored to the requirements of the user. How do we do that? Customizable interface tailored with the user's input and to unique requirements. So you can see, I hope, that, and you get the sense that this is a very organic product. It's almost biological in nature. It's always relevant to the current situation. It's always relevant to the tasks at hand. And it's always evolving to remain so. So is everybody still with me? We're doing okay? Good, okay. So to build this, what do we had to work with? So what were the raw materials, the parts? Well, we had what I call a trove. It's a large body of unique knowledge, a trove of intellectual property, developed here, as we say, internationally, applied behavioral science, spanning 3 decades, back to this 50,000 hours of work. Features of 17 new fundamental models for strategy and communications. I had the opportunity to develop and deploy 17 fundamental new models for strategy and communications over that time. This is going to be my lucky 18th mental modeling technology platform. Had a patent, mental models method and system, and about 7 or 8 years ago developed proprietary software. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So that was our working material. And in addition to that, of course, we had the world's largest inventory of expert models, talk about expert models, and mental models research results. User guides, training materials, programs, procedures, lots of other kinds of intellectual property, valuable intellectual property. Also, and importantly, we had a base model to start with. Back to Baruch Fischoff, mid-1980s. Research and colleagues developed this framework for behavioral intervention, time called expert model, mental models approach. It is, as I say, a framework. It works by focusing people's mental models. What are people's mental models? Baruch talks about them as tacit, below the conscious level, webs of belief and underlying rationale. Belief, what people believe. Pretty interesting. What's more interesting and more useful is to understand why people believe what they believe and why they do what they do or why they don't do what they do. That's the underlying rationale part. Very clear research, very clear that mental models that have been studied since the 1930s, still an active area of study. I think the term was coined in about 1940, but are powerful influences on judgment and decision-making. Importantly, they cannot be predicted without empirical study. You could guess, try and guess what people's mental models are, but of course you'll be wrong. 2 other points. You have to remember that people are complicated and unpredictable in their thinking. Research is very clear on that. And to enable judgment, decision-making, and behavior change, one must enable people's mental models. Enable people to rapidly assemble, as we talk about, new mental models that obsolete for use their existing mental models. Talk about that happens. And the basic technique that was developed then is, as you see here, basically build on where people are at today in their thinking tailoring communications of all kinds to the decisions, the key decisions at hand. That's very interesting. It seems pretty straightforward, pretty logical.
Answer slides.
However, nobody ever did it, except, as it turns out, me. So what did that model look like? Analysis, description, intervention, 3 steps, probably familiar with the language. Basically, it starts with, okay, what should people know? The experts tell us that. What do they need to know? What's critical data? What is the information that people need to know? What should they do? It's going to be better off or not. That's great. That happens all the time. Get the expert model. Second step is almost never done. And that is, well, let's go find out. What do people that we're communicating with? What do they know and don't know? What do they misunderstand? What kind of misunderstandings of cause and effect relationships do they have? What do they have used in their thinking to judge the trustworthiness and competence of people and organizations and communications? What are people actually doing or not doing, and why? We go investigate, the descriptive step. And with that information, we have a way of mapping the two, but with that information, you can develop an intervention. And the intervention is basically answers to 4 simple questions. Okay, now knowing what we now know, what do we best do? And what do we best say? Those are the strategy questions. How best to do it and how best to say it, those are the communications and the delivery questions. So what's kind of noteworthy here to think about? Well, first of all, it is not intuition driven, especially intuition about people. It's data driven. It's data driven. Behavioral insights drive that. That's what you have to work with at the end of step 2. It requires certain tasks to be done in certain ways using a certain research instrument, namely mental models, not polling, not focus groups, none of that stuff. Mental models research. And for a more in-depth discussion, it says I should wave my book around here. It's in my briefcase, so we'll show you later. It's not my book, it's Baruch's book. It's Risk Communication and Mental Models Approach. It's the closest thing we have to a field guide. It was published in 2002. And Baruch told me that when you say that, and it was published by Cambridge University Press, and Baruch said, and you should add, hey, you know, Cambridge University Press published Sir Isaac Newton. So he thinks that's pretty good. So do I. What did we do with that? Well, we went out and applied it, and I took the lead on a lot of that application work. We were working in parallel on different problems and opportunities we conducted. Hundreds of different applications involving thousands of people worldwide. Back to that 50,000 hours. And some of the notable projects, working with the US military on US force health protection. That's helping our soldiers, or ensuring our soldiers are protected from weaponized anthrax and weaponized smallpox. Chemical Manufacturers Association, a fundamental new model about how to communicate about benefits and risks associated with the chemical industry, chemicals, products, proposals, etc. US FDA, Strategic Risk Communication Framework. Over 5 years of work on that alone. Talk about that in a second too. Florida Power and Light, thank you. On all major projects, all their big bets, all their investments, mental modeling was used to understand behavioral insights, formulate communications that would, address people's key decisions with respect to the projects, including nuclear license renewal. 2 nuclear plants in this state were relicensed successfully ahead of schedule and under budget using this approach. And somewhere in between, Opera America, increasing attendance at opera, and which always sort of brings a smile to my face. And importantly, and thankful that Dr. Stewart is with us today, Dr. Stewart took a major lead. He was the lead, he is the lead. He's kind of an architect that I worked with for the Chamber of Mines of South Africa. That is the mining industry in South Africa. It's kind of a reason there is South Africa, if you would. It all started with finding gold way back when. On the adoption system for leading practice and technology. And when we started this, John and I worked on, is the whole industry was stuck. They were stuck. And the question was, how can we be more successful at technology transfer for purposes of improving occupational safety and health performance? Which is a very, people's lives are at stake. People's health is at stake. Complicated environment. And what our work showed, and what John led the way with a paper, a seminal paper, it's not about technology transfer. The South African are as good as anybody with technology transfer. The question is about the adoption. How does it get underground? How do people use it? Why don't they use it? That's the question that we solved. And out of that, over 10 years ago, started development of this management system that's still underway. We could talk about that. That's also, and I hope you will have some questions on that. That's also got another book, actually, it's in there. I'll wave it around later. And at the same time, it's running in parallel. What's going on at Carnegie Mellon? Mental modeling. Take a look. Working on energy conservation, sexual assault, domestic radon, solvents, breast cancer, climate change still going on. Vaccines, xenotransplantation. Anybody know what xenotransplantation is? We'll talk about it later. So on and so on. What's the point? All very different, just as in the applied science. Never the same problem or opportunity twice in all of that time. And they're complicated challenges, just like the one that was being addressed in the field at that time. So what kind of results were achieved? People in the chemical industry were enabled to systematically, not serendipitously, systematically improve their relationship with people concerning risks and benefits. People in the global mining industry were enabled to establish a path towards sustainable mining in Canada and to improve occupational safety and health performance in South Africa, as we talked about. People were in the utility industries were enabled to deliver major new projects, et cetera, and this large body was in development. Also noteworthy for our discussion, kind of running in parallel over that time, or these major events. First of all, mental modeling was scientifically validated. U.S. Health and Human Services is a methodology for communications that will influence judgment and decision-making as intended. US FDA issued a user guide for science-informed, evidence-based risk communication. Now, risk communication is not communication about risk. It's risk communication. It's communication that enables people to make better decisions about risk, to better protect themselves, to work on things that are important. It's about kind of behavior change or support. We would say now today, it's about decision support. And interestingly, this was intended, it was guidance that's kind of used in the FDA, but it was intended for every organization regulated by the FDA. That's 20% of the US consumer economy. And also we see a presidential executive order using behavioral insights to better serve the American people. Basically, you read that, it's very short. It says the science is sound. All the members of the federal family, all the agencies, apply it. And then we have a US patent coming in. Now, a couple of odd things. So here we have guidance from, pretty important federal agencies, go out to these companies, regulated companies, and we have an executive order. And nothing happened, so far as we know. Nothing happened. Not one of those companies that are regulated used that guidance and applied it. And I think the behavioral insights and whatnot used in the federal government today, we haven't seen much progress on that, or government generally. Why was that? Why is that? And I'd submit two things. One is no one knew what to do. People need to know what to do. It's not sufficient to say guidance, go do this, will help you out. You need to know what to do. You need to know what to do first. Nobody knew that. And there was no one available with the expertise and the tool set to help people, adopt and apply the guidance, with one exception. As it turned out, that was me. With a behavioral science-informed, evidence-based approach consistent with the latest advances in behavioral science, consistent with the FDA guidance. But, what am I going to do? I'm sort of busy, and we got a big industry out there. I'm getting to the point where we need to think about the opportunity for USF. That's the point I'm making. So all of this came up to fundamental new model. Here it is. A fundamental new model for strategy and communications, behavioral science, informed, evidence-based approach that works on any topic. It looks like this. Set up by, here, the figure out part, what are people trying to do, to accomplish? And that's not always clear. Jason and I've had a couple of discussions with Giddy about their experience in working sort of in big data and working on problems in organizations. And that fuzzy front end, right? It's like you start, and then because people don't know what's possible, the science, and you get halfway through the project and you got to go back, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that fuzzy front end you clarify. What are people trying to accomplish? What decisions are people confronting? What are these critical decisions? What should people know and do? Back to the experts. Experts, please tell us. What's in the literature? What are the facts? What's the reality? And we take all that information and we integrate it and we put it into a manageable form we call an expert model. And we use our cognitive analysis software suite and knowledge management system to be able to do that kind of work very efficiently and therefore cost effectively. So the next step, okay, let's go find out. How are people addressing the decision? What are people doing and why? Just as you saw, and call that the mental models work. And back to the cognitive analysis software system, which supports the patent. We use that to manage that data, process that data, etc. And then you reach out. This doesn't say, let's go inform people. Let's go educate. Those people need to be educated. It'd be a lot better off when we educate them. When they know what I know as an expert, then they won't have these concerns, these questions. That's not really very productive. So we look at, okay, how can people be enabled, helped to make better, more satisfying decisions? And from that comes strategies and communications, notice, that are tested, that are evaluated before launch. So we know what the likelihood is they'll perform. And we have an opportunity to adjust with data and insight. And we use non-persuasive communications. What the heck are non-persuasive communications? Most of us are familiar with persuasive communications, right? Where does that come from? Marketing communications, other training, so sell people, we have to have buy-in of people, all that kind of language and all those sort of concepts. No, non-persuasive communication, two major features. One is they make no use of spin or recommendations. No spin, no recommendations, no messaging, as the popular term goes now. It's pervasive in the world of public relations, marketing, communications, and so on. And they provide information that a person does not have today that is relevant and useful for decision-making and action. This needs for that such information we are able to reveal and characterize by mental models research. So very quickly, just a quick look at the product. What do we have today? Mental modeling technology platform. We've organized this body of knowledge in sort of three big areas. Decision supports, that's business intelligence. Decision support, that's mostly right now about design and development and marketing, if you would, commercialization of decision support software. We have a couple of things on the go there right now I think you might find interesting discussion. This integrated risk management, huge area, obviously. Risks of all kinds, not just physical risk, financial risk. That's got a lot of work there, a lot of information, and this area of invention and innovation. On the middle is the cognitive analysis software suite, the knowledge management system, The software provides access to that body of knowledge. That's your access point. And it's the toolkit, the essential toolkit for working with all of the IP that's in that body of knowledge. And applying it. The knowledge management system comprises an online network of users, and it functions like a combination, you might think of it as a combination of Facebook, Dropbox, and LinkedIn, where users can communicate, they can interact, they can transact, work with each other, they can buy and sell, they can team and sell, as our software architect says, knowledge items. That's the knowledge items. That's what kind of goes on. That's what passes out there. And the marginal cost of a new knowledge item circulating on the internet is virtually zero. An important feature of the platform is that the body of knowledge is always growing. This is just the seed. This is just what we're starting with as of January 26th. It's always growing because every application, whoever's using it, every application gives a contribution to the body of knowledge. So it's growing, it grows very quickly. It's always current. The knowledge management system also offers a bridge for basic science researchers to communicate and collaborate with the applied science professionals, the applied science community. A very important thing in order to maintain currency of the knowledge base. And just, who are they? Where are those communities online? What communities can we tap? How about ResearchGate? 11 million users internationally on ResearchGate tapped into a project that I've set up or available to tap in. How about Academia EDU? Probably you're participating in that, some of you. That's 54 million users. We're going to bridge those communities to the application community and the application professionals to come. And I'd emphasize, you're looking at this is technology. This is not consulting. Okay. The mental modeling technology, Rick?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could spend some time talking about how this might be useful in the Sarasota-Manatee region to local businesses here.
Sure, let's get to it. Talk a little bit about this business system. We come back to it, what we're doing, if anybody's interested. And here I'm going to call a little bit on Raymar, Kim, for a little help. And I'd ask you, just since we're thinking together, what is the zen of this slide? The zen of this slide is the future is empty and it's marvelous. Tout est possible. Everything is possible. Let's see what's possible here in Sarasota. Now, when I met Kim for the first time, Raymar instituted, and I told them kind of what we were up to and what the technology was and some of the past experiences, it was like electric, those two things. And they got me thinking that something had a vision that I really hadn't thought about. And what happens when you take this new, fundamental new model and this technology, and you kind of drop it into a system? And let's say it's the socioeconomic system of a city. Let's say Sarasota. What happens? Well, it's a system. So you get system-wide effects. Right? That may be, so what happens? What becomes possible? Kim and Raymar, help me out here. This is a lot of your thing. So what now becomes possible for USF as kind of a center point in this system? What's now possible with this technology on board is available. So let's say USF can become a center of new knowledge, science, technology, but it's in a system. It's not an island. So we have to think about, okay, stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders for that center? Talk about the leadership at USS, of course, but the faculty, the students. What's in it for them? What's their stake? Program participants, the people who will come to programs, to courses, to workouts, to workshops, to apply the technology and generate benefits for themselves. and every organization in Sarasota. I'll let Raymar and Kim kind of speak to that. That was the thoughts. Okay. We're in a system. So, and over here we have partners. So maybe it's the tech accelerators. It's about invention and innovation. Right? And no more failure at 80% failure rate for invention. Angel investors or local investors. They're partners in this system. Banks, partners in this system. Others, you can see golf course CEO Forum, of which Kim is an executive director, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Raymar and Kim also talked about the hospitality sector. Talk about what I'm talking about. But what could that look like? What could it look like at USF? Well, you could host here workouts. I call them workouts, call them workshops, offered in the following communities nationally. Start with serving kind of the local community, business, governance, not-for-profits. But it looks like workshops in new product development and marketing. Back to the accelerators as a partner. Not-for-profit governance. All those not-for-profit organizations that could really use this new model for strategy and communications to improve their operations sustainably. Municipal governance. We got a ton. Every municipality does a ton of things to work on, which could use a new model for strategy and communications, and so on. State, federal government, minority enterprise. Why the government? Well, remember what the executive order was, right? The science is sound. Government, where so many people stand to benefit. Americans, citizens, apply it. Hasn't been done. Now it's possible. The USF can take the lead. Minority enterprises, those kind of non-mainstream folks that somehow don't have these tools all operate. Let's do that here. Do it, bring people from around the country. And regulated companies. The pharma, food, medical devices, energy folks. The people that are under the FDA guidance, but don't know what to do. Don't have the tools. Now they do. Now they will. It's provided by USF. What's that going to do? It's going to create new opportunities in the community. It's going to create new jobs. I like the idea, just put it out there. Part of this is let's create some student companies. We need people in the system, the business system, to do mental models research. I'm not going to do that. No. Put this in the hands of people that can use it. Do mental models research. Be software experts. Then the software. Do the research. Let's create those companies here and have students run them and be them. And so on. What are the role of stakeholders?
Gordon, so when we were talking, so what you're basically saying is, Obama gave an executive who said, let's use this. So since you're the only person who knows kind of how to use this, what you were saying, and when we met and started speaking, is how can we get this science out here? Is this something that we could do and learn more about it? Because I'm still understanding it, to be honest. We've had lots of conversations. But is this something we could do within education university to research the students that then we can train other people? Because you're the only one with this information. That's what I'm saying. And that's kind of what you're trying to say here is, okay, we have this technology. It's proven. I have the patent. But nobody knows how to use it.
We got to train, and it's my role to make it available. That's kind of all I can do. I'm not going to build a company that's got all these researchers doing all this work. No. Let's put it in the hands of people here that do the most good for other people.
We were talking because of us working with you all on FIG and students and CEOs, just to kind of brainstorm a little bit and get some people in the room together today to listen to this, to see like maybe this could be a possibility, or this is something we can do locally to solve some of these big problems that we have. And it's taking a case study and taking one problem to start there and how it works and go from there.
Well, I may have been late and missed it. But what is the patent? What is patent? I'm curious. This sounds
right.
So, I mean, what specifically? If this is not consulting,
right,
is what you're saying.
Right.
This is a system.
Right.
What exactly got patented? I'm just trying to get my arms around.
Patented applied decision science approach. What the patent covers is you collect data and organize data in the form of a model. In this case, call that an expert model. Okay, that is an analytical framework. It's like it works like a screen, sift and sort other information. Then you go out and using this specialized technique, mental models research, you collect data from lay people. And you map that data using the software against the analytical framework to produce these mental models. And getting your interest or your work in data visualization comes into play here. So these are visualization of people's thinking and influences. What are those influences? Precisely on people's judgment, decision-making behavior. So the patent covers that process, formulation of an analytical framework, collect data, a lot of it's qualitative, use software, it's specialized, it's built to map qualitative data against the analytical framework to produce these insights.
So maybe I should word it differently, because I'm still having trouble. There are expert models out there right now. I mean, AI, I mean, there are all sorts of expert models out there. You didn't invent the first expert model.
Right.
There are models that use that as a benchmark. I'm trying to find out what you're doing that's different than what was being done before. Because there is data accumulation, there is data analysis.
What can't I do without infringing on your patent?
Well, you can't do mental models.
Can you do any mental model?
Can't do this approach without infringing. Can't get, don't think of this as expert models in kind of the computer sense or the IT technology. These are topic specific. Breast cancer, xenotransplantation. What are people working? What is the expert model for protecting yourself from the likelihood of acquiring HIV/AIDS as a result of your sexual practice?
So let me give you a very specific one. Last night we had a speaker at the town hall who is a cancer expert. His qualifications were beyond anything anyone in this room has ever experienced. Stanford, Harvard, Columbia,
right?
And he's written a couple of books, and he is looking at, with others, what is the cause, the genome of cancer, right, specifically, and how can you look at the data of 500,000 different people going in. So he's got data going into a system and analyzing that data to come up with, was that benign or is that likely to be benign or malignant? And his big theme last night was the social issue of actually finding out and understanding that you may be likely, like 23andMe, you may be likely for something. To me, that sounds like modeling of data, using experts' opinion or views and data going in, and AI, which is actually predictive. And I kind of go, would that be infringing on your patent? Because it sounds like all of that information is expert modeling and data analytics. So I'm going back to where Tom's question was, is where with all that's going on today in a lot of different venues, right, and very specific things, and you mentioned cancer as one, how is this different than what's happening today?
And maybe Isan wants to help me out a little bit here too. But that data, that big data, that analysis, okay, would be an input, if you would, on the topic here. That would be, okay, we know this can happen, or want maybe other data from other experts that come together and give us sort of a full picture, not of diagnosis of cancer and characterization of a particular problem. Right? I mean, that's important. But rather, we're trying to help people kind of make decisions, like treatment decisions. And we're trying to enable physicians to essentially better collaborate with people in their decision making. just their treatment options.
Is this a predictive linear model?
No, not in the sense that we're talking about. It's predictive when we understand the behavioral insights, right? And we develop interventions, and we can, with confidence, if we're working on the right things, we're communicating about the right things in the right way, and we would expect to see.
I don't mean predictive in the sense of how someone will behave. I mean predictive in the sense of how someone should behave. Because I don't, first of all, is it linear? Is the modeling linear?
No, I don't think so. As I understand, sort of linear, and as you may understand it, it's not sort of perfectly predictable because people are kind of unpredictable and have to deal with that.
And what are the real-time inputs?
The real-time inputs is it takes a person to collect data from experts, from the literature, and put it into a manageable form, information, facts and figures, managed, trackable, and that's expert model. It takes a person to do that. The software does not do that automatically. It doesn't sort of go out there and do in-depth literature reviews and draws models. I don't know any software that does that. We have a capability in the software because it's current with things like natural language processing and so on, where you can do concept maps from literature reviews and so on. Concept, which is kind of a precursor to expert models, but it's not really very well developed right now. It's got a long way to go, but possible. So the software doesn't do that. The person organizes that information and comes up with an analytical framework. This kind of model looks like an influence diagram. Nodes and arrows. Then from that insight, we say, okay, what are we interested in studying? What do the experts say, is maybe missing here? We need to go find out. Not what the experts would predict or say, hey, people need to know this, right? And I know that, and I'm an expert, right? So let's just go tell people what they need to know. You don't do that. Because you find out that experts are no better, no more successful at predicting other people's thinking and their information needs than non-experts. You think so, but they know their data. They don't know all of the expert model, but just humanly, they're not able to do it. So you go out and you get the mental models data, and that's analyzed using the software.
Is that just a piece of market research? How do you find out?
Typically one-on-one in-depth interviews. Sample sizes vary, but if you read the literature of the book, a sample size about 30, and tend to be hour-long interviews. So 30 hours, that's a lot of data.
And is that part of your software?
Yes.
And is your patent a software patent?
It's a system patent, business system.
For this process.
So it's a process patent.
So
yes.
So if I truly am trying to understand so that I can grasp it and go, aha, and I'm not there. So I'm just sharing with you, I'm not there. So if I'm the guy last night, what would you sell me? So I'm an expert in the area of cancer. I go to all of the conventions. I talk to other doctors. I got this huge database of big data. If you were selling me on your system, what would you be saying to me that you're additive to my efforts to solve or help my patients or help, and that I'm willing to go, I want to plop some money down and make that work for me? What specifically would you be saying to me?
Well, maybe an example that's happening right now is we are designing a decision support software for a major medical center in this country. Can't say who it is right now, but we'll be able to soon. And it is a decision support tool. It's not AI. And it is enables physicians to make kind of diagnostic decisions. But it also enables patients and their families to kind of understand their treatment options better and make critical decisions about treatments on a specific disease. It's called vestibular schwannoma or neuroma, problem in your ear. And so on this matter, you have it set up so the decisions have to, the patient and families are making critical decisions. The physicians are collaborating with those people because they're using the software. Physicians are using the software to do what? To think through together and support their decision making. To answer questions and they have to communicate, to better communicate on the physician side about risks associated with certain treatment options, so on and so forth.
Can I give you from one of my companies a practical problem that we're facing and see if that might get it down to a real world example might make it more clear. So about 80% of the healthcare spend in the U.S. depends on about 20% of the population in the last 2 years of their life. And one of the problems is that over the last 50 years or so, doctor's office visits have taken over from house calls. It used to be more than half. You can see the patients in their home, you can see a whole bunch of information. And now we've got all these comorbidities and chronic care, so we're trying to bring house calls back because you can treat people better, keep them out of the expensive institutions, out of the hospitals where they can get a hospital-acquired infection. And there's a whole rationale. But you've got a system where the hospitals, the doctors, the nurses, but most importantly, CMS, the payers for these people, because they're mostly all Medicare, will give you a 20% premium for making a house call, when in fact it should be much more than that because it's saving the system a lot of money. Right. Okay, so that's the logic of it. But you've got mental models out there that say, well, I went to medical school, this is the way I've always done it, or I've got this pressure, I invested all this thing in an office-based practice, and I've got to see 40 patients a day, and I don't have time to go see people in an assisted living facility. Is your software a system, if you get the right people together, to try to address that?
It's the mental models approach, the method and system. It's a bridge. It enables communication, better communication, effective communication, and enables sort of behavior change as intended between parties. In your example, let's say the medical side and the patient side. And maybe an example that's underway now that would help is that we're working with a company that has got software that is all expert driven. They can come up with any amount of information and that people need or to kind of manage their status. We're helping design that sort of them customizing it so they can produce a decision support tool, supporting the critical decisions of people, 40 million people in this country, who we call the sandwich generation. Those are people who are caring for elderly parents not in the home, or parent. At the same time, they're caring for children, and they're busy people, right? And they could use some help, and they've got key decisions to make, and how do you kind of assure that your elderly parent is well and safe at home?
So in your step one, you're sampling a bunch of those sandwich generation people, and then you're finding out. So you're sitting down. Well, it's a sample. First, you get what's available in the literature. Now you're on step two. You're going to sample. Now, after you've sampled and you've come up with from that sample, you're going to project to it nationally. You're going to communicate that to the population at large.
What we know is what we deal with is figure out what decisions are these people confronting. They have to make an investment, or somehow are they managing their elderly parent to be well and safe at home? We understand their decision sort of priorities and their situation for decision. And then we build a tool that provides them information that's kind of relevant and useful for helping them make that decision. It's population specific. It's not a consumer product, right? It's for those people we characterize.
Yeah, but how are you would have to pull all the sandwich generation together and have them use the software. How are you going to do that on the internet.
That's the software companies can up to that, and they've got sponsors, you know, in health that are funding this development. The breakthrough is to make a decision support tool, not a consumer education tool, specific to the needs of a population. So that's going to be, for them, that was the aha. So you develop that, and at the same time, so you've got a specific tool for those 40 million people. And you can also now, it's possible to have a knowledge management system that they can all participate in, they can communicate with each other. And, you know,
So it's kind of like LinkedIn for decision support.
Not a bad way to characterize it.
Can you describe what you mean by decision support? What is that actually? Is it predictive? If you do X, you have a Y probability that there's going to be a certain outcome? I mean, what is decision support?
Well, an example is something we did a number of years ago. It's called CHEMM. You can look it up on the internet, CHEMM, where we identified, and this is for use by first responders and first receivers in the event of a catastrophic release of chemicals. It was developed for the National Library of Medicine. And basically what we did was we understood the decision-making priorities, the circumstances of decision-making of first receivers, a fire captain, a police captain, and first receivers, trauma unit nurses, trauma doctors, so on and so forth. Got it to understand, okay, what are they priority? The fire captain's coming on the scene. What are the critical decisions? Do I send my people in there? What am I dealing with? Like, I see a green cloud. What is that? Do they need protective equipment? Got to make these critical decisions. He doesn't need a quick education, okay, on, well, gee, here are all the critical, maybe it's this. What he needs is decision relevant and useful information. So first we characterize all of those decisions as priorities. And then you can set it up such, it works on as a little PDA or works on the website, that that person gets a direct line into the Library of Medicine. Except the Library of Medicine now is customized to present that person with these critical information needs. So that aren't always predictable by the experts. So what we learned as an example in developing this is that a critical need, a critical decision, both the receiver or the responders and the receivers, wasn't generally available in the literature from the Library of Medicine. It was way down here in fine print. Is, okay, decontamination. Not just how do I protect my people, how do we decontaminate them? So, you know, and how do I set up a decontamination? Well, that's all built in. So now that information comes, and we know that's what they're going to need. So the Library of Medicine source is able to prioritize that. So that is supporting the critical decision, enabling the critical decisions of that community of first receiver on that topic.
It's just assimilating existing information and almost triaging the importance of each piece of information that still requires the human integration and eventual action upon a choice. So I'm not sure how it's different than, other than speeding up the availability of information. In that case, I'm not sure making it mobile.
So we do need to wrap up the formal part of the presentation. I want to just take this opportunity. You're welcome to stay as long as you like to chat afterwards. We have the room. I want to take this opportunity to thank Gordon very much for this presentation.
Before you go, back to what's in it for Sarasota and USF. If you do this, these programs do, you know, what happens 5 years hence? What are you looking at? What is the opportunity here? And I would suggest, and as we talked about Kim Raymer, it looks something like this. You have thousands of enhanced jobs, people coming from organizations learning how to do this, using these tools, and taking it back to their organizations and working on and integrating in their operations and working on big things. Those are better jobs. Those are now tech jobs. Those are jobs that enable people to be kind of leaders in their organizations. Thousands of them. Qualified and experienced experts. People are now expert in mental models research and non-persuasive communication and so on. You've got hundreds of new companies that are built. Software companies, other practices to enable organizations or service organizations with their needs, inventions, thousands of operations integrated into operations, not consulting, thousands of operations nationally and internationally, very important, and so on and so on. Widespread reduction of risk, and millions potentially of people that are better off from that, and so on and so on and so on. Millions of positively impacted people, and the reason, the last point there is just something to think about, and that's let's put it this way. What is the installed user base for mental models that's existing today? And the answer is 7.5 billion people. That's the approximate population of people on planet Earth right now. We all have mental models. Ultimately, all can be participants and realize benefits from this approach in the hands of people who are trying to do the most good for other people. So thank you. You get a sandwich?
So this we are kind of dedicated to restaurant food. And the other one is so it's first. Yeah, I get that. So it's changing.
We were to redress all of this, get rid of all of this, all the buzzwords, whatever, sound good, you get those out in 5 minutes, and then apply, like, here's the real case. there's a school club that has to do something, we understand students. You're bringing all those people out there, but yeah, that's each you draw on where you show us right, show them
That's what we use.
yeah. And I was just saying that
Somebody of the media.
that's like a shady conversation.
And I like the idea of the horses.
Well, this is gonna be one of those things where you just gonna take a while for it to catch on and for it to need a case study or something.
That was helpful.
Show people. It's not like it's hard. I've been working for a while, I'm still okay, how do you pull the right pieces out? Because there's so much there. And then in an hour, how do you get the right? Pass it all. I'll just go back. Pull out the key pieces.
Hey, how are you? Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
It's been all about the experts.
Right, good to see you.
You know, it's working with people, enabling decision.
The hard part is
And it's new.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so it's,
Right.
so you don't have a minimum.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing, right? Anytime you pioneer something like that, especially in this world, like you're gonna have naysayers and detractors. So I think the town is gonna be showing those first few. And you've got all the, you've got show your book, the book of case studies over the last 30 years.
50,000 hours.
Right, so it's just applying it in this instance and figuring out how do you catch that first wave.
You go to work and USF is a place where people come to work.
Yeah, especially with research. I mean, even just the research side. Imagine feeding the cognitive science, behavioral science world with research that's emanates here on whatever topic, right? Whatever topics the school might want to get involved in.
So if you set up these a workout or something for the regulated companies, you know, they all have some of it. And it's a across the country. A workout. 4 or 5 days. You work out and they go back, they're equipped to the organization to work on these problems. They didn't come to a course on theory. Okay, they brought the problems with them, they work on it, and they work on it, come up with interventions, and then go back. Now, what are they going to need? They train in mental models. They train in expertise. You can train in the open, expert model. Because they protocols, worksheets, guides. Go back, and what do they need? Skills, expertise, models. This is for the first 2 applications until they develop. They're going to make use of it. Mental models are search. You get that? Public design and
This last row here. Yeah, good to see you. They were here.
We have students training them experience and their power uses. So you can actually make 2 or 3 student teams. People come to an organization and you have students that are here. So here's your team. And you go back. Yeah, go back.
But how are you?
And they're going to and they're going to all of that goes on now retired. Bills and bills. So I think that's wonderful. And it has to happen. If it's not students, it's going to be a research company, maybe a small research company that's also trained and equipped to do it. And they will service them. And it will happen concurrently, right? Students won't be supported. All of this idea. Students in enterprises and all little companies learn business as well as research.
First of all, I can tell you what I thought about your presentation. You sounded so nervous. I think this analysis we talked to you, we really had a clear idea of what you're trying to do, and it is scientific based. help you if you had started with probably a case study, something that we did. This was a problem, we did it, this is a solution, and this is what we can do, this is what we can offer, right? But, you know, your presentation didn't really give a very clear view of what you're trying to do. But based on our conversation with you, it makes sense to us, right? And then you started talking about human-to-human interaction and then cognitive science, but somehow you're putting this data analytics into it, right? Which fits in, but I don't think people could kind of visualize in terms of, because as you were talking, I was thinking, even though I know what you're doing, I was thinking about expert systems. You're trying to create an expert system, which has been done in the past, but what you're proposing is very much the same, but kind of different than an expert system, right? So maybe in the future presentations, that's something we can do. And also maybe the next step would be talk to Karen, Dr. Goldberg. You know, she was also, as she was walking out, she said, the gentleman next to her explained it in 5 minutes, and she says, now I get it. Now I get it. She said she was getting excited about what you were saying, but at some point she got lost.
I think it needs to be focused. Like if you did that 30, 40 minutes and you just did right there in about 5 to 10 minutes, and then spent the rest of the time case studies and engaging, having like the real feedback and hey, what are the questions? Or then you get the excitement of having everyone in the room, because I bet you would have got, you know, it got good there at the end when you started getting some questions. They got a little tense because they were hard questions. But that's where you prove yourself as answering all of our questions, and you know you have the answers to them. And so, like finding a way to engage that audience a little earlier, I think would have been good. And getting feedback from the people, and so.
Yeah, I mean, the question he was asking, he said we have this expert here who is, 500,000 data, and he's doing this and that. The key is that in your system, you want to use that expert as one of the experts among other experts to come up with this way of decision making, and it completely makes sense. You know, but you got Karen's attention. You know, she's the one that you want to talk to, especially she mentioned the reunification of the campuses and all the decisions, and especially for her as a leader, how to bring faculty and students together. But of course, you mentioned this is the other era of data-driven. We are in data-driven era where we want everything to be based on that. But I was just sitting there, and I didn't think your presentation did justice for the work that you're really doing, and you've been doing successfully for many years. And so I just thought I'd give I have to go to Cancun, so but I just wanted to let you know.
That feedback that'll help us to try to shape the next one.
It's been a continuing challenge. All the time. This is so new. I heard so this. And everybody was it's a way of scientifically understanding decision. And
but I don't think even they understand what it means to be stuck. What does that mean? They say they're stuck. Maybe an example of this company, they were stuck in decision making, and this is how it's done.
Some of the anecdotes you gave while you were doing the training with some of the hub leaders were real powerful. And again, there were no anecdotes today, right? So like some of the hand washing practices, some of the mining stuff, right? The stealing copper in the security system and the mining, right? Like teaching people why that copper's there. It's here to protect you. It's water standard. And so it was just, hey, we're stealing it for a quick buck, not understanding a long-term neglect of not having that security system. And so again, explaining those fundamental, the application of it, which is where you're really strong, because that's all you've been doing is applying natural science, I think would really help people visually understand that. And I have this has given me a bunch of visual thoughts for like how can you spruce up the slides to maybe even help impact with some of the visual as opposed to just the text. Can we little animations, little something to just little pieces of something that I think might help captivate people a little more, because yeah, you run the risk of like of just, this is where science gets it wrong so many times, is they're stuck talking to the science people. And to really make the impact, you have to talk to all the people. And all the people need a really, like, a more simplistic way, I think, of seeing and connecting all the dots. Which doesn't mean you have to dilute the message, but at some level you have to, find ways to bring more people into that.
Another thing that happened, how we do say, people heard technology, heard software, and the whole meeting was derailed. Because these guys needed to have answers to their technical questions, right? The whole point of this meeting is what's in it for USF? What's in it for Sarasota? I should have said, great, we'll talk about it after the session, folks. That's not what this is about. Let's look at what the opportunity is. This is what we want to do. And this is your leader in this community. Your investor or something. You're a stakeholder. You're going to be part of this, I hope. And get the message that it starts with the leadership. I'm not going to do anything. I can't. Right. I'm not building a company.
But
I just have this to offer
happens.
to people in Sarasota.
That's what happens when you bring researchers and
Yeah.
educators and people from industry,
Right.
you put them in one
All in
room.
one room, right?
You notice that, of course, the questions are going to be different. I've noticed that people in industry are less patient than we are.
Right.
It's just they want right now result. What can I do for us? We are like, where's the data? What is the research behind it? What is the science behind it? Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, of course.
Well, I'm going to blame that on Brent.
No, it really fit in because you were not here to pitch really as you said, to sell anything or
So what are you going to sell?
right. It was just talk about the science and research behind it, and I think for us that's what we are interested in.
Somebody in this room might develop something that they could sell to that person. That's the business model, right? Is that a couple years from now, there might be some really cool businesses that revolve around some of this stuff, and they might be creating really cool products that have this stuff baked into it to offer their.
And there's a science, risk communication science. That helps people better protect themselves and reduces risk. That's the outcome. Not, a lot of, bells and whistles and, some sort of readout from a piece of software.
But anyways, I don't want to take the risk of being caught in the rain and have to go to Tampa campus. So I have to leave. It was a pleasure seeing you again, and thank you for coming. Hopefully we'll have some follow-up meetings. Just make sure to talk to Karen and Dr. Hall.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Talk to you later.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You guys. Support and thank you. I mean, my gosh. That's right.
Well, you had, like we were saying, Tom was more of an investor guy, Bill was more of an investor, but they were trying to understand again, what is it, what can right now, and how is it different from stuff that's already out there? So I don't know if we saying a case study or something, because I know I'm gonna get calls from saying, okay, so what again, how can we use this? So is there a way with USA, is there a way to put together, I guess the question is, with the students, a model? We're trying, there's a problem, reunification, whatever the problem is that we need to solve. Could we do that so then we could show?
We could do kind of a workshop.
That's what we talked about that first workshop, was actually hosting a workshop. Maybe there's some USF stakeholders, maybe there's some CEO stakeholders, we can get a couple other community organizations involved, a couple of nonprofits, and come up with that first thing. And, we talked about some of those potential, what those could be. Major community issues, right? Is it the affordable housing, right? Is it some of the environmental issues? Is it some of the social issues, right? With the economic disparities? Is it the young versus old divide, right? There's really cool opportunities to do that. And I think that would be a great place to start, is to say, let's at least have this first sample of how we would approach it. Because then you come into a meeting like this, again, with that case study, with the example, with people who were your champions saying, I was there. It's a more dynamic, system to present.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because I think and maybe it's okay, maybe those people there, the investors, we don't need to prove anything, but we have to show for somebody to pick up and start using this, we have to show an example of how it works. Yeah.
Well, and I can't imagine like a Dean Eisner or a Tom seeing, because when we first talked, no offense, my BS meter was off the charts.
Yeah.
But then as we worked more and understood it deeper and deeper, then I started seeing the value in that. And so I think that in that initial experience, I can totally see where they might, be missing some of that stuff. And so finding out how do we bridge that gap, I think, is the first model, right? We need to maybe apply some of this to the process that we're seeing here.
He still didn't get it. He's like, I still am not getting this,
Right.
And so that was kind of like what I was trying to explain, but.
He's locked into.
Well, I don't think that's it, because he's a smart guy. I don't think that's it.
So
I think it's
how
well,
powerful that is.
because the presentation didn't lend itself to that. Yeah. I think that it had a lot of information in it that was really good, and I understood almost all because I've been with for the last few weeks. But as a fresh group, if I